All right, sir. Scott, may I ask you to call the roll?
Yes, sir. Franklin,
Yes.
Gasker,
Here.
Gilbert, King,
Yes.
Pop.
Here.
4 attendants, so we have our quorum.
All right, I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda for tonight. First of all, are there any additions that anyone would like to
You
make?
know, I'm not looking at an agenda. I mean, I can go to my phone. I thought usually we have.
It's not on your app.
No.
I'm sorry, I left the extra comment back here.
Oh, okay, I missed it when I came in. Oh. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, because I could have pulled it up. I could have pulled it up on my phone.
All right.
I don't think so. I looked at the agenda though before I came.
Tonight we have one item for discussion, and I think Nadine has under public participation, she has a letter she'd like to read or a comment she'd like to make. But are there any other additions to come?
I have a, I don't know, it's an announcement.
Okay,
What is it, the new business?
yeah, I suppose it would be.
Okay, so then I have a point on the new business.
Okay, we can do that. Should we call it anything else other than announcement?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And we may already be aware of it, but I just want to mention it again to make sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Lisa, seconded by Nadine.
Second.
All right, thank you. Thirded by Andre.
Yeah, third.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. I can't make this motion since I wasn't here, but I'd ask for a motion to approve minutes of our last meeting, April 5th meeting.
So moved.
So moved by Lisa, seconded by Nadine again, or Andre, as you wish. Is there, I have one correction to make. I did not adjourn the meeting.
Oh, no. It's always the easy one.
Yeah, at the very end.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because I wasn't here.
We thought we heard your voice. We thought we heard you say
That's what, I hadn't perfected astral projection.
Okay, we thought,
I'm working on it.
maybe in the spirit, maybe wherever you were going, I wish they would have turned it.
Okay, so I assume that was Norton. Is there any corrections to be made? If not, would someone like to approve? Can I have a motion to approve it? Oh, we have a motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right, unanimously. And now we have public participation. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I want to tell you how I appreciate the work this committee does. You know, I've observed a lot of the committees that the city has, and you guys seem to do a lot of good and usually engage in very good discussions. And I know for a couple meetings, this committee took the time to discuss the LPR cameras for a while, and there was a lot of good discussion. The chief made some points, but I never saw anything come out of the discussion that went to the city council, including the, you know, and I know it's not exactly, the city council doesn't absolutely have to approve it per se, but a recommendation from this committee regarding the LPR policy that was discussed. City council never, I didn't see anything on any sort of agenda unless it was some sort of consent agenda item, but this committee put a lot of work and several meetings into the discussion of that, so I would like to see that come forward to the city council in some form. Now, this committee also has a very wide array of things you guys discuss. One thing I brought forth, and I emailed the alderman about it, didn't have a chance to email you guys. As you guys know, the gas prices are incredibly high now, and the city takes in 5.5 cents a gallon, which is not going to change because that's based on a per gallon price. However, the city does benefit from the statewide gas tax that is put on the sales of gas. And the city levies a 2.75% across the board sales tax on all non-food items. So the city is generating a lot more revenue from the gas sales tax, which they're going to be taking into the coffers. And I have suggested, and maybe this could be a point of discussion in the future for this committee, I'd like to see maybe the Finance Advisory Committee perhaps bring this up, perhaps doing what many other cities are doing. They are eliminating temporarily their gas taxes. It's been talked about at the state level, which they're basically keeping theirs the same, they're not raising it. But other states, municipalities have discussed such a thing. Most people argue that gas tax is regressive. I've heard that quite a bit. And now the city is actually benefiting from this increase in the price per gallon, almost double. What was it at about a year ago? $2.50 a gallon, now it's at $5 a gallon. They're generating the sales tax they take in of 2.75%. We either need to talk about maybe figuring out where that money is going to go. Can we use it for other projects? I mean, they can use it for any projects outside of roadways because it's a sales tax. The gas tax, the 5.5 cents a gallon, has to go to roads because that's a lockbox kind of thing. So I think this would be a discussion perhaps for this committee in the future, because this summer we're going to be dealing with these high gas prices and there's no end in sight. So just a suggestion. And that's all I have.
Thank you. We'll take that under advisement. I think that is something that the finance committee might take up as well. But Bill, you wanted to respond to the first part of what Marquette said.
The first part
About the policy for the
LPR policy.
the LPR. So, right. So, in presenting the first, going back to when the proposal came from the chief to the council to invest in these, we talked about the general considerations. And concerns were raised as well as just general practical questions about where they're going to be, and it was understood that we didn't want to put yellow lights on just to make sure that all the bad guys knew exactly where they were. But also considerations that you've discussed here were discussed in other forums with the council. So that's an operating policy. It's the kind of thing that every department's got a number of operating policies. The police internal regs and so forth. Obviously, right now we have a watchdog group in the Citizens Police Review Board, which looks at how the police act within their operating policies. But generally, the LPR is about one kind of instrument. It just folds into the department's other list of operating policies. Public Works has them, Fire has them, Fire has a lot of them. So it's not something that needed to go back to the city council. It's something that the council expects the city manager to make. So
If I were to just as a point of information, if I were to, I'm pulled over sometime because somebody agreed something on my license plate, and if I were to ask the officer, what is your policy? Where do I find that? Is there a place I can click on?
you can go right now to the website.
Okay. So it is accessible if somebody wants to track that. Okay, thank you.
I just saw on the news that Chicago is going to get a lot more of those.
Well, I think a lot of places are, yeah.
Oh, well, I just saw Chicago.
No, but
I was like, whoa.
So I just could add, I don't remember what was said on the 5th. Remember initially we were waiting for the state police to incorporate us within their notifications, and now that's been done. So
Okay.
it is working to our advantage.
Okay. My concern would be just that, so that people aren't necessarily anxious about this and so forth, that they can find their way if they so decide. And Nadine, you wanted to make a comment about something? Sure. Yeah, sure, please.
This is hard because it's spread so little.
Okay.
Pardon me, I'll do my best. Dear Human Relations Committee, let me start by saying how much I appreciate the work the committee does, the work of inclusion, equity, and equality for all citizens of our community is taxing. It's belonging that will make this community better for everyone. Currently, I'm in Virginia, so I'm writing this letter to share concerns I have. As a community, I believe we're all excited about the buildings that have been demolished over the last few years. The building on Edgebrook was not suitable for living or the residents' dignity. While many years ago, Black Hawk Cinema was a great place to see a movie, those years have passed. The Hunter property on Hillcrest was grossly mismanaged and became an epicenter of criminal activity, thus it needed to go. In a strange way, these vacant spaces are a representation of hope, opportunity, and a brighter future. We all know what the community chatter is around the Annie Glidden North neighborhood and the people who live there. A stereotyping and mischaracterization, oftentimes grounded in racism. A community and people I love and know well as New Hope has been serving in AGN for over 20 years. To start to change this narrative, it will take years of dedicated labor and engagement of the residents who live in AGN. It's been my experience oftentimes, the voices and perspectives of AGN residents are overlooked and devalued. The city spent a healthy amount of money on a revitalization plan for AGN. I must say the plan is beautiful and lofty, yet it sets a goal for our community to work towards. Again, it will take years of dedicated labor and finances to see this plan become reality. Now that these properties have been cleared, especially the Hunter property on Hillcrest, the joy of dreaming aloud begins. Now we have the opportunity to dream and work toward a structure that will not just make a property owner rich, but will also address the needs of those in the community. I'm concerned this will become a colonization opportunity led by individuals who may unknowingly suffer with white savior syndrome. I'm concerned people who don't live or operate in AGN will tell the residents what they need without the authentic voice of the people. During this time of listening and gathering information, don't overlook the residents. Be intentional about empowering the people and centering their voices. There is no such thing as collecting too much information from the people. That means government leadership may need to go to AGN and engage the people relationally. This is an important time for the city of DeKalb. Let's do it right. Thank you for your time, Joseph Mitchell.
Thank you, Nadine. I want to address some of that later this evening when we come to that item on the agenda. But is there any further input from any members?
About what Nadine just read about?
Yeah, well, sure, or anything else, if you like.
Well, I can move my announcement up, if that's okay.
Oh, sure, that'd be fine.
I know we're kind of relaxing things, if that's okay. My announcement is just about the survey that the Mental Health Advisory Board is submitting. And we'd like to make sure that every entity that is available would take it and pass it on to people, their constituency. So that was my announcement. It wasn't about anything else. I'm reading this other information now, but I do want to say, we tend to think of mental health always as a crisis, right? There's a problem, somebody's acting out, somebody's acting up, but mental health is a continuum. And so self-care is also a part of mental health. And so the more people that fill out this survey, the more access the county will have to services and ways to provide services, increase services, and improve services. So I don't know if the city has it. I'm hoping you have it. I know it's going to be in the Chronicle.
I haven't seen it yet. I was going to ask you if you know how a person can get a hold of it.
Yeah, I will talk to Deanna and make sure that the city gets some.
Deanna Cada?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that somehow it seems to be limited.
Might
It's
be
out
going-
there. I took it.
Might be going around it right now. I don't know how widely. I'm probably, because I'm not in one of the, the 32
Right.
local not-for-profits that may have contributed to the
Yeah.
organization in the survey. So it could be that Joanne has that at I don't know, Scott knows about it, but I'm not personally aware of it, so I'd like to.
Okay, well, we want certainly the city, and what happens, and what people think is, oh, my organization is handing it out. But your organization, people can do it. You're not just, you're not just passing it out. You get to do it. You get to take it, you get to comment. And so we want your feedback,
So that's Community Mental Health Board is.
Yes.
Deanna's.
Yes, and there's another, it's an advisory committee, and we put it together. I learned a whole lot about, I'm like, let's
Lisa,
just
where
do
do you
it.
find this? I didn't even
Well,
know
that's,
about it.
yeah, that's the interesting piece. To my understanding, it's going to be in the Chronicle, and a lot of places, like I thought the police department would have some, and the township was supposed to have some, but if you're not in that list, then we need to find a way to get it just to.
How did you check?
I think City Barb's posted it, there was a link to it. They said you could win like a little prize too. if you-
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you do it online, they didn't ask for your name, so I don't know how they're gonna give you the prize, but you should do it
Well,
for the prize
at the
anyway.
end, it should say, if you're interested in the prize, go to this.
Yeah, I didn't see that at the end. I looked all over, not that I care too much
No,
about it.
yeah.
But there were some fill in the blank things, so people, you do have to do, there are some questions you do actually, rather than just multiple choice on there, so
Right.
some people may not fill it all the way out, but it is somewhat extensive, it asks a lot, so.
Yeah, trust me, we took some time,
Yeah.
it's kind of exhaustive. But I learned a lot in the process, I don't mean to take up a bunch of time. I'm kind of like, hey, what's the deal, why can't we just do it? But the longer we processed it, the more I began to understand the importance of process. And I mean, we do a lot with process here, but in terms of, let's survey, let's do a small focus group, let's get a feel, what do we use? I thought it was outstanding. So I will talk to Deanna, Bill, actually
Good.
about city, because city should have it. And the police officers should have it, and the social worker. And I think Deanna may be working with them, but I will mention it.
Thank you. And Joanne Rouse may have it because she's in some of the networks that kind of overlap each other.
Okay.
But you've done a good job just by saying if everybody who gets one tells somebody, it gets around a lot faster than,
Yeah.
did you say this? Well, it wasn't on my list. But Deanna's usually pretty good. In fact, I'm going to see Deanna, maybe she'll mention it tomorrow. We're talking with the Community Mental Health Board and Northwestern Hospital, who've been involved with us with social workers, and we haven't done it in the police department.
Okay.
There's two, see if we can get three, one per shift, so we'll be talking about that tomorrow, but if she's there, I'll ask her.
Please, because she may have other things and not always, so.
So Joanne has it, and she is in a email with many things she asked me to share on social media, so I can post that to the city's social media page on Thursday.
I'll see if the council gets it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Well, if I can, I want to respond briefly to Pastor Mitchell's message to us and give a brief preface as to why he asked Bill to come before us tonight to talk about the demolition that's already completed and what the plans are for that development. I have a great deal of affection and admiration for Joe Mitchell. I think he's done tremendous things for the city. And I want to be very mindful and very cautious about white saviorism. I think, of coming in and telling people what they need and building for them and so forth. I think we can't pay close enough attention to that. But I also don't want to start at square one. 3 years ago, August of 2017, I think, was when this project, this revitalization plan began. Mayor Smith, sort of brought all sorts of people together. And Joe mentions the chatter about that part of town. It's about a quarter of our residents live in that neighborhood. It's the poorest, it's the most densely crowded, it has the fewest amenities in terms of, you know, a grocery store. Transportation was bad.
Healthcare.
People felt, pardon?
Healthcare.
Healthcare was, you know, was absent, apart from, you know, maybe getting your kids to a Welsh child clinic if you could get up to the health center. All sorts of issues. And people felt, I think, largely cut off, excluded, like they weren't really a part of the city and so forth. And so efforts were made to bring together sectors of that community to involve as many people as possible in order to come up with some amenities that could improve the quality of that area, of life in that part of town. I was on that task force. I was on that task force with Joe's dad, and Joe's associate pastor, and any number of people from that community who gave some kind of testimony. And the discouragement sometimes people feel when commissions, you know, like this are convened is, you know, and all of you that have been involved in committees before have heard something like this. Oh, we're going to do this again? Oh, we're going to do this again? We did this 5 years ago. We did this 10 years ago. But it just goes on a shelf and it sits there. And then sooner or later, somebody's going to come over and do it all over again. So why should I waste my time? Why should I come up with these suggestions and so forth and so on if it's not going to go anywhere and you're just going to get a new mayor or a new whatever and start all over again? So I want to be mindful of that too, because there was a lot of community input as to what it was that people wanted to see and wanted to need. And those discussions continue and ought to continue. And I think we ought to involve people in the neighborhood as well. But suggestions, you know, again, not for the first time, but again, in an ongoing way, because people have asked about, well, gee, couldn't we have a branch library there of some kind? Can't we get a grocery store here? Can't we get a drop-in healthcare center? What I've got for you, what I printed up and distributed, are a couple of pages. If you want to read the plan, if somebody wants to look at what that plan is, it's 96 pages, and it's on the city site. But I think there are just a couple of aspects of it that I'd like to highlight. Under core goals, you know, on this first page that I printed out, developing a stronger sense of cohesion internally and with the rest of the city. I'm skipping down now. Create an environment that provides residents with a foundation to thrive economically as longtime members of the community. Increasing access to healthy food as a tool for empowerment. Addressing the deficiencies of the neighborhood in terms of social services in order to fill the gaps with viable solutions. Parenthetically, once upon a time, and I don't know if this group still meets, Bill, but there's the health department, social service agencies would meet at least monthly in something called networking for families. And so what would happen is, let's say, okay, the gas stickers. The gas stickers have some issues. The gas stickers, you know, they don't have money for health care. They've got a kid who's in trouble and needs some help. They, you know, can we get them in the WIC program? Can we get them in this? Can we get them in that? And so forth. Kind of case management approach, so that somebody doesn't have to get on a bus and go to this office, and then the next day go to this office, and then the next day go to this office, and try to chase whatever help can be found here, there, and everywhere.
It still exists.
It still exists?
There are a couple other overlapping time.
Yes.
That started in the 80s. And so now there are, the Community Foundation has something called not-for-profit initiative, I'll say. I don't know if that's exactly right. And that's all the original 18 or 20 of the network members,
Okay.
plus another dozen and more. And it's more county-wide now than it is DeKalb City. But that, the same players, some of the same players are still involved, and many new ones, but the essential services are all there and have grown, so that's why it's not quite the same, but when I mentioned it, when I came in and I mentioned it to 3.5 years ago to Joanne, she said, oh yeah, same people are meeting, but it's a larger, more layered group than it used to be.
See, once upon a time, there was at least a discussion among the health department and various agencies for a kind of universal intake. Kind of, like, okay, let's say you're a single mom and you're getting away from an abusive ex-husband and you moved out here to DeKalb and you've got 2 kids and you've got very little money and you're looking for a job. Is there a way that you can register and somebody will tell you about where you can get some help for school? Somebody can tell you about where you can get groceries for your kids. Somebody can tell you about the services that Safe Passage offers. Somebody can hook you up here, there, and elsewhere so that whatever resources are available in the community are available to you. And you don't have to scratch your head for 2 years and say, oh, I didn't know there was such a thing.
Like a one-stop shop.
Exactly. So that, under this, what was this? Addressing the deficiencies of the neighborhood in terms of social services in order to fill in the gaps with viable solutions. I would include something like that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
No? So I read through these, because I wasn't clear about, what to go for. I haven't read the 96-page
Oh,
document.
sure.
Just so you know.
We only have one life.
Right. But I read under here, growing the local tax base with new residents. I'm curious why it doesn't say with residents. Because not just new residents, right? We want current residents to shop and spend money in that area if and when they can, if something appeals to them. And not just new residents, particularly because the Antiglen North area is not, well, I don't think of it like I think of River Mist when I think of
sure.
tax base, right, in terms of people and buying and that. But I think, so I'm curious as to what that means. Does that mean we're not talking about the current people that live there? Are we talking,
I don't know what
that means.
A couple of things. A, I'm not here to defend.
No, I'm not asking, I just need clarity.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. What I've done is I'm not sure. What I've done is try to pick out those things that I think could fall under the purview of the Human Relations Commission, of things that we are equipped or supposed to address in some way.
Okay.
So as far as increasing the tax base with new
Okay, well, I'm not asking you.
No, I don't know how we do that, but.
I just want some clarity. I didn't know what that meant. And my other question is, second to the last, it says ensuring that various stakeholders have ownership and pride in the AGM revitalization plan. Why is that not a city goal, right? We want the city to have some pride.
Oh, I think so, of course.
And I say that, I'm from Chicago. I never let that die because that's my home. Chicago is varied, right? Neighborhoods are different. But the city of Chicago, even if they don't mean it, they say, we're Chicago, this is what we do, and you have different activities and you have different festivals and certainly things move around. And so I think if we could probably think broader and think of this as an investment in the city and not just this area. And I get that it is this area, and I say that because I remember when gentrification started in Chicago, right? And I lived on 35th Street. 35th Street was gentrified. Cabrini Greens was gentrified. All of the Robert Taylor homes, gentrification. But they never said it like, we just want this area, right? We're trying to help the city. And as much as I think that people resisted initially, there's no doubt now that the city is thriving as a result of the changes that occurred. And minus some residents that, they say, well, you'll be able to move back. They didn't move back and got placed someplace else. I think overall, the people that live in those areas, one, are happy about where they're living, and they're happy about the environment. And so I'm not on this committee, as you know, because I know that you are or you were on it at some point. I just think, and keeping in mind what Joe said, I think it's important for people, one, to be involved in their own experience. And a lot of times in the city of Chicago, that did not happen. However, I don't know what investment the city of DeKalb is going to make. Because that plan I haven't seen, I don't know if it exists. But I think we can do it in such a way that makes this a city experience and everybody benefits. I told you, one of the things I love about DeKalb is I leave like that over there at Blackhawk. Man, I went over there one day and I saw the trucks, they were tearing stuff down, right? Honest to God, I came back another day, like it's no concrete, like it's nothing, it's there, the people have done their work, and now it's time for the next group to come in. That still amazes me.
I agree.
And I think that, you know, it's amazing. One of the bylines Chicago has is Chicago works. Well, Chicago does most of the time, some of the time.
Well,
But I think DeKalb can do it, and I think, and I don't know if it's too late to increase this, but I think the goal, honestly, is DeKalb wants to be a city that thrives, and that all of its residents are able to thrive. And when something says from surviving to thriving, and a way to do that is just to make it, every neighborhood, every community ought to have the same, the values ought to be evident in each community.
I couldn't agree with you more, but I want to respond to that just in an anecdotal way.
Please.
Okay? In this, and the part, without taking too much time, the part that I was on this task force had to do with transportation, had to do with bus routes, and it had to do with parks. Green spaces, what, you know, things for places for kids to go and
That are in every community.
and things that kids could do. One of the things that the city invested in, that the park district invested in, was to put in this splash park at Welsh Park.
Right.
Now, why is that? Well, for a couple of reasons. One is that, yeah, it's good for kids to be able to go around and run around in the water and so forth and so on. In the neighborhood, it's also good to have that, because you know what? There might be some kids that live on South 3rd Street or South 2nd Street that might want to come there because it's fun. And then, and their parents might bring them there and say, hey, you know, this is kind of nice. Is there a place you can get a sandwich around here? You know? So not just for the people in the neighborhood per se, but to make that a destination for people who live elsewhere in the city, and that would, and to decrease the sense of isolation, and to get people to, and what does a business want? A business wants customers from here, there, and everywhere. So I do think that there is and there was some effort to incorporate the whole city into making this into embracing this neighborhood as a place where if you don't live there, you want to go.
Say that again, if you don't.
If you don't live there, you'd want to go.
Oh,
Because you
yeah.
have a reason to go, other than to see your friend who lives there. And you want to say something.
What you were talking about, that was what Joe and I were talking about, how cool, like, I said, you know, wouldn't it be cool to get a Trader Joe's? Because that would bring, and Joe and I thought, that would bring in everybody from the community to that area, not just a, you know, a grocery store, but that kind of specialized store.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really think it's important that whatever goes in there, it's not isolating, that it's to draw and bring the city of DeKalb into that area, not something that you drive another way to go around.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that like a little bigger than the city? I mean, wouldn't someone have to come and want to open a Trader Joe's?
Well, they'd have to do what, a feasibility study, right?
Trader Joe's, since you bring it up, yeah, it'd be cool to have a Trader Joe's. But they've stayed away for the last 10 years, and believe me, I've been from Sycamore and DeKalb, looking at them and others. Don't have enough population. Not really.
They say it's not a big enough population.
No, people are going to drive 50 miles. Now, we go that way, we go east, but they're not probably going to come west for Trader Joe's. or maybe from, I don't know, and then there just aren't enough people within that 25 to 35 mile radius. They're very, they're successful, but they, because of the wares and the
Yeah, you
food.
have one in
But
Rockford.
they have, but yeah, it's a much more populous area.
Right.
And you got southern Wisconsin there too, you got Beloit and so forth. But they are also keen on their business model, and we don't fit.
Even when you think about in that area, you have to include the students in that area, right? And then you would have to include Malta, because Malta's right down the street. So it wouldn't be just the.
So we're 40,000 with the students that are here on a permanent basis. That includes the students.
Right.
Yeah. So if, where they are in Geneva,
Right.
they have 1.5 million within 25 miles.
Oh, point made.
Since you mentioned Trader-
Population of the county is just over 100,000.
Since you mentioned Trader Joe's and their business model, or other business models, first 2 or 3 years they were there, right, in Batavia. You go there and so forth, and you're buying your groceries, and almost always the person behind the counter says, "Can I have your zip code?" Why is that? Because they're
It's
seeing
important.
what they're how
And periodically they'll ask
how
the
far do
same
they
thing.
how far do they draw people from? That's
The
right.
corporate people need to know that.
Yeah, that's right.
But anyway, but we could talk a lot, and that's just one, and that's food. So you can talk about other things.
Right.
It's not uncommon that they have a model, and they're pretty, and right now, for the next couple of years, as we're trudging through another economic downturn, they're going to stick tighter to their model. They're not going to want to expand.
Well, among the other things that are suggested has been a community center,
Yeah.
because
That's my vote.
there's no public space, there's no place for people to get together, to.
Do you think I could jump in now, because I
Yep.
stayed
Yep.
late?
Yep,
But I didn't know, Joe and I talked, and I was just going to come literally for 5 minutes. And
Oh, I'm
say,
sorry.
here's a handout. I wish I brought the plan, and Joe did bring some good excerpts from that. The key excerpt that would touch off, and I think you all have a little handout
Yeah.
at my place there, or your place there. That out of the plan, the pages, there's one page in particular that talks about redevelopment. I suppose that's an elastic word, but generally it's used both in the plan and more widely as having something to do with the redevelopment of property, not necessarily schemes and plans and things, but property. So that's what I was just going to focus on tonight, and then leave you with something, and you can look at it, and we can talk about it at the next meeting. This is a
I
topic.
don't think we have that, with the picture on it.
You've got, Joe handed these out earlier.
That's,
No,
Did you not?
there's
Oh, I
some
didn't.
pictures on a,
You
and
want to-
these are excerpts from the plan itself, right, Joe?
Pardon? Yes, that's right.
are you working from this phone?
Yeah, tonight when I talk, that's what I'll do.
Okay, which page?
Oh.
Well, I'm not gonna read it all.
Why not?
So, I just want to just say a few things about where we are with that portion of the plan that deals with the redevelopment of property and the opening of opportunities for people in the neighborhood, for others, what you were just talking about, to make investments that will raise expectations, more than raise expectations, will raise opportunities for people, for jobs, for services, for good food, and the list. And by the way, where we are right now, I may as well just jump to this because it's important, and we'll be talking about this in our community for months, very soon. We've already had conversations about this. By the way, there is an opportunity Cal board, which was constituted as designed by the plan, which I had nothing to do with. The plan was done. In fact, the first day of my tenure, the committee, Herb Rubin and, were you the present, who was the co-chair?
Oh,
came to my first council meeting and said, here is a plan, and we are hereby disbanded. I thought, what? That's news to me. Why would you spend a year and a half on a plan and say, we're out of here? And I understood later on what it meant was some of us may come back and want to be part of an organizing committee that's going to work with the council and the community, and we're going to start trying to knock off some of the objectives here. That took a while, and the first thing that grew out of that was the Opportunity Cal Board, which is supposed to be generally representative of the neighborhood and the community at large. We can arrive at our own conclusions about that, but it still is there. Dan Kenny is the chair. Chad Glover is their very part-time, very temporary assistant. Do you know Chad Glover?
Yes, yes.
Nice guy.
EW is moving up.
And EW is on the board.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, and others, so it's not, they've been involved in the neighborhood for a long time, a lot of folks. So, what did I want to talk about tonight, which is this handout, 5 pages. So, this is just focused on creating space, and Lisa talked a little bit about this, opening up space for positive development. What's that development? What are the uses going to be? What are the 20? What's our top 20? We talked about good food, Trader Joe's, healthcare, maybe some kind of an adjunct extension of the library, so people can go get a book, you know. All of that. That's, yeah. That's, I think, going to be the focus of the community, the whole wide DeKalb community's discussion in the next probably 90 days. Starting maybe our second meeting in June, 27th, I'll open it up as a consideration. Council, how do you want to proceed? Because at this point, the city government has assembled a lot of lots, a lot of property that's ready, or very shortly will be ready, will be grassed over here by the end of this month, for people to stand back, you know, kind of blink a little bit and think about what you want here in the epicenter. This is not the end. Black Hawk and Hillcrest, West Hillcrest are not the Antigua neighborhood. That's a core, I guess you could say, of that. I mean, it goes into Twombly, the boulevard just on the west side of Dean's Garden, goes to Normal pretty much on the east side, although that's not a perfect boundary. North to the north side of Dresser, and south to Lucinda, really, I'd say. You know, it includes parts of the campus and the rest. So that's a large area. You hit it. A quarter of the city's population is there. But the area that had the most decrepit properties, the most crime, is right there in that core. So what's been done, some of it started in small steps around the time that the Antigua North Plan group was organized, mid-17 roughly. And there's a lot of detail here, just sort of to chronicle 4 building initiatives that had to be tackled. It took a while to get some funds. The federal funds that came to the city in the last year, a little over a year now, the American Rescue Plan, are really key to some of the things that have been done just in the last, say, 8-10 months. So thank you, federal government. First time since federal revenue sharing was probably ended in the 60s that we've had that much federal money available for really positive stuff in this area. So 912 Edgebrook, Joe talked about that. It sat there and it sat there, and it grew out of some years of contention between the previous owners and the city over the property maintenance issues and the asbestos and so forth. And finally, I was around, but just records are there. The city said, well, we're going to take you to court and sue to have this demolished. That was acrimonious and contentious, wasn't going quickly in court. And so the city thought they had at the time access to some grant money to tear it down, so they said, we'll buy it at the negotiated price. The city bought it, and then the grant fell through. So the city was the proud owner now of one of the most decrepit buildings in town for about another year and a half. And I couldn't stand the sight of it. It was not only clearly vacant and windows sort of knocked out, and it had that A-word, the asbestos attached to it, but it was graffiti on a regular basis every week. And the city could only do so much. I mean, it was boarded up. How can you make that look nice? So it had to come down. And the idea was in an area with very little green space, just having it down would create opportunities. It was just grassed over for people to recreate and enjoy themselves. So we eventually got that done. The total city cost, it was about $488,000, give or take, that's in here. Around the time that we were making some progress on that, something came up. It was just a little fortuitous thing, but at the time the city had no foothold in that core area. You had the campus cinema, which was falling down, and the walls are being held up with 2x12s. And then you had Hillcrest, which was had their crime issues, their law enforcement issues, but also terrible property maintenance inside. I'm going to pass this around. I just want you to see. This is what it looked like when we bought it. I wish I had a blow up, but I don't. This will, I hope you all paid a little while ago. That's one of the apartments upstairs. And that's with the rain coming in because of the roof. And what's on the floor there are not pebbles. So, it was decrepit and dangerous and unhealthy and unsafe. But the city learned that there was a gentleman by the name of Andriaki who owned the property right next to 912 Edgebrook. He said, well, you're going to tear this down, and have it torn down. I need a little more parking because I only have 20-some spaces. And now you've got this Safe Streets initiative. You won't let anybody park on the street. So I've got 47 tenants. And we're playing musical Cars every night. So what are we going to do? And he wasn't alone. And he said, I need about a little under a half an acre. And I happen to have a half an acre just down from Fanaticos. It's immediately south of Fanaticos. And like the light bulb went on. So we didn't know at that point whether we'd ever get campus cinema or any of the rest. But we'd have a foothold, and we could work with others in the community and the Opportunity Cal Board, maybe eventually to get some other things. But it was like a hold. So we got that for nothing, straight up swap. And it was kind of quiet. It was done in mid-2019. And then we started making some headway with the gentleman who owned Campus Cinema, who was unique. I'll say. Really thought that it was a gold mine, and there really wasn't much wrong with it. In fact, he had some ideas of building another floor on it, and it was literally falling in. So I got to give credit to the city attorney who worked some magic here. But in court filings, it's clear that he and the attorney for the owner reached a settlement agreement that Judge Waller put his hand on, which gave us the opportunity. I think he just didn't understand it, Coach Pindy didn't understand it, but it was a little Byzantine. But basically, we'd sue to demolish it. He'd agreed to allow us to sue him to demolish. We already have him in court for that anyway. He said, you're not going to demolish my building. I'll demolish my building. So he demolished his building. And then we had the right to foreclose on it. We would charge him. We would basically set a lien against the cost that we had already incurred for writing. And we'd be able to foreclose on that lien, come into ownership of the property, and he'd have to repay us for the cost of demolition, which he wanted to, in the end, we had to do it. We paid for it. He did it, we paid for it. So it was about $375,000, and there was some other costs in there. But that, I just said 375, it's easy to figure it that way. But the big dog was Hunter Hillcrest, and we had no money to do that. And that was part of the big four, right? Tri-Frat, Ridgebrook, and Lincoln Towers. And we also arrived at a settlement there, and it gave us the right, we didn't have the money for this, but it gave us the right to make an offer, with an option to make offers on any one or all of those four. Well, we couldn't, the one that we thought might be within shouting distance was Hunter Hillcrest. Lincoln Towers had a price tag of $6 million, Hunter Ridgebrook, or something like that. Tri-Frat less, but Tri-Frat was not the most onerous of the four, it was probably the least onerous. So we eventually came into, the story is just recounted here. Control of that. It's down, as Lisa said. We're just a couple of weeks away from having all the crushed, recycled concrete and asphalt removed. We'll bring in fill. We'll do some rough grading. We don't know what kind of buildings will be there. So, but we'll have soil on the site that will grow grass, and we'll seed it by the end of the month, and that'll be that, almost. So, we're currently in court for one last thing, maybe, it won't be the last, but Hunter decided to claim that they had a spike strip, so that made the press maybe while you were away. So we bought the property with control over a retaining wall that was between us, the campus and the almost city mind's eye, and the higher level elevation of the Hillcrest. And at the time of our closing, it was one property, and it was identified as such in the county records. And not only did they sign off on that and close on the property, but they also signed an affidavit that said, according to the Plat Act, they had executed everything in good faith. And then a while back, let's say, Matt Rose called me and said they're claiming now that they own a 5-foot strip, which would confound redevelopment there, because somebody might want to build across that, or who knows what would happen. It might be a driveway, it doesn't matter. Nobody would close on the property if they thought that was there. And they came up with it. It was very ingenious. It's absolutely untrue and illegal, but they know how to run the string, so that's what they're trying to do. And so there you are. The beat goes on, the battle.
I want to take you back to the very beginning of your presentation. And first of all, I mean, thank you for all of the work that you've done.
By the way, the total so far, may I just say,
yes.
and at the end of this year, we're going to do some traffic calming and creating more green space in the vicinity of Edgebrook and Kimberly. So when you add those, you get to like 4.8 million. And what I forgot to say, we're going to do another 100,000, so that if you're at Eden's Garden and you want to get to high school, you don't have to, you've got a nice sidewalk down that takes you to Anniewood, and then you got to run between the cars to get to the other side of the street, and then you can get up to the intersection at Dresser and go east at a safe traffic signal intersection. So on the west side of Anniewood, we're going to push those bushes back. The sidewalk may have to go around a few things, but it's going to get up from Twombly up to Dresser. And then there'll be crosswalk, there'll be crossing signs and lights, and it'll be safer. And maybe the schools can put a crossing guard there.
I was gonna say, maybe I can get like a patrol person, yeah.
That'd be good. So, sorry, I just want to say 5 million, 5 million in 3.5 years.
And how much of that is the city money? How much of that is federal? How much does the state, I mean, how
Most
much?
of the federal money, well, CDBG money is federal money, so
Yeah.
we've been sprinkling that in there, here and there. So, most of it right now is federal money,
Okay, that's.
of one form or another. HUD money or the ARP program, and we've dedicated, for good reason, the money to this area.
Believe me, I'm not complaining, I think
Yeah.
that's money well spent.
Yeah.
But if somebody were to say, city spent how much, I'm to do what? You
Yeah.
know, that's.
But the council could have spent it all on other things, we could have thrown it into streets.
Yeah.
And that, you know, there's always a drumbeat for when you're gonna fix my street, fix my alley.
A couple of things, and I don't want to keep you much longer, but A, first of all, thanks for all the hours and all the ingenuity and all the attention you developed in chasing bad actors out of town. And by that I mean the owners of the properties that you just showed us pictures of. I think that's absolutely essential. Second, you mentioned at the very beginning that we're going to be entering this period of 90 days or so
Yeah.
we're discussing, so what are you going to do with this particular property? I hope, to speak to Nadine's concerns and Joe Mitchell's and others, that this isn't just a matter of discussion that, you know, that happens at the second floor, not at the library,
No.
and say, y'all come, but I hope there can be,
So-
some of those discussions
Yeah.
can be held at New Hope or Westminster Presbyterian or
Anybody
somewhere in
who
the
wants to have
neighborhood
us.
so that people can come.
But it hasn't, it's not like we're gonna start it, Joe.
Yeah.
It's been going on for a couple
Right,
of years.
right,
And not
right.
just the study group and the creative.
Right.
Every time there's been one of these events, people come, we talk.
I've been to
what do you
several,
think?
sure.
You have.
Yeah.
And at some point, there will be some formal hearings, which will be in the lower level of the library.
Right.
As part of a council meeting. But collecting ideas and polling people who attend about what do you think? Okay, we got a big whiteboard here, we've got 10 things up here, 15 or 20 or 30, whatever. All right, now, how many like this, and see a hand, you know, you eventually get down to 10 or 12, and then there'll be another group, and we'll see, and I bet there's still gonna be a core of 6 or 8 key things. Food is part of that, right? A controversial one, but it keeps popping up anyway, is housing. Now, you think, why do we, my gosh, we've got all kinds of housing here, but it's in various shapes and sizes and conditions and so forth. I'm not a big advocate of that, but that's, here's the other thing, and you hit it. This has to be not only sustainable in terms of the services and the goods that are made available. It has to sustain itself because the city money, the federal money now is going like this. You know, the ARP money will be gone within the next year. Used up, gone. No more big acquisitions, no more of that, for a long time. There isn't gonna be, I don't know, unless you've got a different crystal ball, I don't look out over the next 2 or 3 years and see the federal government doing another $1.4 trillion worth of aid. It's not gonna happen. You know, we've got inflation and whatever. So I don't see that happening. So there isn't gonna be that municipal level of power that we had over the last 2 years, which I thought we needed to spend and not take the hit or whatever. So what's going to happen? Something there is going to have to be profitable. That doesn't mean everything is profitable. It might mean that nothing on the Hillcrest side is profitable. I don't know what it'll mean. But somebody's going to come in, if you want somebody to build something there, they got to have bank support, and they're going to say, how are you going to pay my loan? And we'll say, well, we've got a lot of great not-for-profit space, great, you know, I'm not going to make any money off of that, but that's good, it meets needs. Now, is the grocery store going to make money or not? Is the health center part going to make money or not? You know, the library part won't, the community center won't. So we can't ignore that. because that's just the reality, it's the reality that faces us every day, whether it's anywhere in North or anywhere else in this country. If you want, and you hit it, even with the intense population within walking distance or within a pretty short bus ride, there isn't enough buying power there. Forget the mean or median family income, forget that. How many loaves of bread are you going to buy today? You know what I mean? So you got to bring people in from elsewhere in town and say, I love this. This is a great place. I'm going to shop. I'm shopping there. So.
You don't think it starts with the crime rate there? I mean, without making it safe again,
Something.
who's going to build?
All right, so the last thing I want to say is, and here we're relying on a private party. We don't control it. But Clear Investment, Amy Rubenstein came in and bought up those other big three. We bought one, she bought the other three. We still have suburban apartments and suburban estates here in the county. But as we have just seen in the last one, well, immediately Amy Rubenstein's group cleaned up the outside, so there wasn't debris and overflowing huge dumpsters and all that. That was fixed. But has there been more peace, more security? Yes. That wasn't overnight, but it is now, I would say. And if you hear no otherwise, let me know. But I observe that's the case, not only by my personal observation, but police information that comes to me. I have access to every day. Calls are they're not going away, but they're down. People are paying rent that weren't paying rent before. Some of them are still pretty tough folks. There's still a lot of families though, and families are feeling a little bit better.
Well, I think you did a lot, I don't know. I really encourage anyone here. I just finished a book that came out not too long ago by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called Talking to Strangers, or How to Talk to Strangers, which is a really interesting book. He has a lot to say about
Gladwell?
Gladwell. But here, what the book is about, Sandra Bland from Naperville went down to Texas to get a job there, and was pulled over because she moved out of the way of a police car, and was arrested for not signaling a lane change. And 3 days later, she was, supposedly she committed suicide. But anyway, she died in police custody down there in Texas. And they have the camera footage of this officer pulling this over. How the hell did we get to that? How the hell does the routine encounter, well, that's the question he tries to answer in this book. And that's the question he poses on page 1. And he tries to go through all the ways that policing and all the ways that we misinterpret things and all the ways that we screw things up. Anyway, in the last part of the book, he talks about something called coupling, which has to do with crime and it has to do with policing. And he says that cities, generally, larger cities, are developed in precincts. And we say, this precinct or this part, this is a bad neighborhood. There's a lot of crime in this neighborhood. There's a lot of crime in that neighborhood, and so forth and so on. But when they do statistical surveys, they find that it's much smaller than that. It's not the neighborhood, it's this street. I mean, it's from this block, from this corner.
It can even be a floor. It can even be a floor.
Or it can even, or a house, it's a particular address. And people say, well, if you get rid of that particular address, they'll just go 2 blocks this way, or they'll just go 2 blocks that way. But it doesn't seem to happen. I mean, if you get rid of this house, or you do something on this block, it actually reduces crime more so than you might suspect. And he sort of charts, this is what happened in Baltimore, this is what happened in this town.
Well, you look at Chicago, when they tore Robert Taylor apart, when they tore Cabrini Green, I lived in Lawrence, they did some destruction to Ivy Wells. That community is different. There are businesses there, those IIT students come and they live, they move in. It's a different world, and they had plenty of crime. They had plenty of crime, but what they decided was that they would uplift that community. And some people were managed to stay because they had various incomes in terms of moving in, and that meant that some people took a risk. Like on 35th, where I used to live on State, there's a Whole Foods, there's a Mariano's on King Drive, there's a Jimmy John's Subway on State. 35th and State was right down the street from Stateway Public Housing, which you could never imagine putting a Subway. Jimmy John's. It just was not feasible in my mind, and I'm pretty open-minded. But I'm telling you, when you create a community intentionally, and you think about diversity broadly, you're going to get a different outcome. So my only perspective is we can focus on, and this is a lot because I know that money piece is real. Don't think I don't. We can focus on, the AGM, and we can focus on the crime, but we can also focus on what is it that we want. What kind of outcome do we want to have? And maybe we can talk to some people that have done it.
Yeah, well, that's what we're doing, and we have been doing. And we've had some people out from Chicago who have been doing this for 40 years.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a mega developer. I'm talking about some of them. One of them is not for profit. Who actually they find a way. They retain earnings, but that's what they call it. It's not profit, and they literally pour that back into the facility. Yeah, so not a boat on Lake Michigan or something like that. So, and that works. And maybe that's the model. What I would prefer that we do is we get that short list and maybe an intermediate list, and then we put this together in basically a request for a proposal, and we farm that out. And let's see, we're not farming out, but we broadcast it as widely as we can imagine, locally, regionally, nationally, whatever, and see what kind of response we get. If we don't like the response, we have to do anything. We go back to the drawing board. We can massage it a little bit, figure this out. What were the concerns that we heard? Some people would not even bother to respond. Some will and just say, I can see this working for me with what I do. If it was this, and we might say, well, I get it, but that's not what we want. So we're going to keep trying. So this is not a fast process. Really, the heavy lifting is just about over. And now, I can't. We're not ready for. What's that song? Now the love begins. The 70s. But we're not ready for the loving yet. So, but we're past. We're getting to the point of a nice threshold where now we work together and we speak frankly with each other.
Definitely.
And talk very frankly. But with the idea this isn't going to go on for years and years, we're going to make some decisions.
If I could add to Joe's letter, I think it's tough to bring whole communities to come out. And I say that, we can't bring all students to come out, right? We're going to do this, and then there's like 7 students over here that are pissed. Like, we don't want to do that. They come out, they're all enraged, and then the other students get enraged, and that passes, and it spreads. I think it's something as simple as a postcard that the city sends to everybody and puts in the mailbox and say, we're looking at these 7 things.
What do you think?
And that's simple, right? It's that simple. Drop it in the mail, postage page.
Yep.
If you got some other ideas, talk to your precinct captain, talk to your alderman.
No, we have
That's not so
class 3
difficult.
mass mailing permit, so we can do it pretty cheap.
Well, this is what I'm saying, Bill. So what I'm understanding is that when he talks about that savior piece, it's easy to say other people are making this decision. It's another thing to say, well, listen, we're gonna give the people in these communities an opportunity to respond.
Yeah.
And here are all of the factors that we're taking into consideration. And we know, everybody knows that money is always a factor. So let's not pretend like it's just a, kumbaya moment, we just wanna make it.
Yeah.
No, we need to make sure that it is sustainable, I won't even say profitable, sustainable, and it's simple to ask folks what they think. And look, you might not get a soul, you might not get a car back, and if you don't, move
Now,
on.
here's one other thing may I just, and then
Sure,
one other thing we have to remember is, so we have a representative body that, and the city's broken into 7 wards. And those 7 people will make the decision about ultimately about the uses and who gets the property. There's no way around it.
Right.
That's the way it is, because you take them out, we're not gonna have a plebiscite, it's not gonna be 40,000 people and 20,001, let's see how many, it isn't how it's gonna work. So, it's real important that people who want to be engaged in this and active are gonna be talking to the person, whether that person they feel they're represented or not, they're gonna be, I hope, pressed to do their duty. And that's to listen and engage and to present and represent.
Well, I don't know who that person is for that area. I just hope that it is somebody that's connected and that is reaching out. And I'll tell you why, because when you talk to people who are upset about what's going on in their community, and they don't have any idea, and they didn't know who to talk to, and nobody talked to them, they don't say, I knew the person.
But Lisa, I just want to point out, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I don't want to discount the efforts that people have made so far. To get
Nobody
people.
wants to discount
No, let me just talk, let me just explain. When opportunity to count, when what used to be the Andy Clinton Task Force has its meetings over at Westminster, right? It's not 8, 10 people in a room. It's more like 60, 70, 75. What do they do? They send out flyers, yes. What do? They have them in the evening hours for people after work. They have somebody to look after the kids while the parents are there. They have sandwiches from Jimmy John or whatever and drinks so people can eat. I mean, there's food, there's child care. I mean,
I know people
I'm
that
not saying this isn't
participate.
about me. This is about you and others. This people
I know
have made
people,
an
Joe,
effort to
that
get
have-
people that. What's that?
I've attended those.
Yeah,
Jimmy
I know.
John's, yes.
I know people that have participated as well. What I'm saying is, I don't like to ignore people that raise a concern. I don't ignore Mark, even though sometimes he gets on my nerves, for a whole bunch of times he gets on my nerves. But I think he's within his right, he's an active citizen. In fact, if all citizens did that, we'd all be better, the community would be better. So Joe raises a concern with a letter about what's occurring. And so what I'm saying is, hey, I hear you. And the question that I ask myself, just like with my students, can I do it better? Can I broaden the door? And if I do, who is hurt by that? I'm not saying disregard the people that laid the groundwork.
No.
Ignore the people that came before them. I'm not saying that.
I guess, I don't know how to put this except to say that efforts have been made to invite people repeatedly. It's not to say that those efforts shouldn't keep being made, but I don't want you to think that nobody's bothered to send out a flyer to somebody's mailbox, or nobody's bothered to try to get people involved before. They've tried very hard.
But maybe they don't feel comfortable going
You
to
gotta build
Westminster.
relations, I mean,
Oh,
someone
yeah.
just gets a postcard, just gonna throw it away.
Well,
That's what I think.
You gotta
that's
have
why
that
we
relationship.
were saying that maybe somebody's sitting outside in the
Yeah, you
summer
gotta
at
have
the
that
table.
relationship, I mean,
But I
I'm
mean,
gonna read a postcard.
this doesn't make
show
sense to me because Bill's done all this work and he's saying the exact same thing. Continue to find what other people want. He's not saying stop it because he did the work.
No,
It's
no.
gotta keep
No,
going. But,
I agree.
well, I don't
I
know,
think it's-
because I don't know.
Well, I'll say this, when you look at those
I was a
people,
little offended.
Oh, I apologize for that.
Hey, Joe, when you look at those people in Chicago, where Cabrini was torn down, where
Yeah.
Robert Taylor was torn down, some people were not happy with it. But there were people, well, this is my point. There were people who worked with it who said, I didn't like living like this. I didn't want my grandkids to grow up like this, and I'm so happy. And more than that, I'm happy that I was a part of the planning process because this gives me an opportunity. Now, let me say this also. You started that program over here. Since that time, some of those people have moved.
Sure.
Since that time, some of the people that are impacted by what you're going to do are different, right? So when you started over here, that was nice. But now we're over here. And so there are new people over here that are going to be impacted that weren't involved, that weren't participating. And so if you only use the people over here that you started with, you're going to leave out some people that are going to be impacted. That's all I'm saying.
May I just add one thing?
Yeah, sure.
I said that before, didn't
You said that 3 times now.
That's
Bill.
what
I? This is the third and last.
Bill's friend with Joe, he's a preacher, so that's how they do it.
So, I was talking about the council earlier, and yes, much of the Anglican North is in one particular ward, this Montclair, but I think Lisa or somebody said it earlier, getting in the meeting, that this is a community, it's a city.
Yep.
Initiative, better words than that. And so, everyone's involved, no one can escape. And the other thing I would say is, it isn't just property-centered or neighborhood-centered. Lisa and I, everybody here probably has had some piece of the belonging discussion, right? So, whatever we accomplish in the next, year and a half to 2 years, say, whatever this takes to materialize and so forth, the work will be ongoing to that point, and then it can never stop. Because somehow, the bridge, and you hit it exactly on the nose. So why would somebody throw that out because they don't feel I'm involved? I don't feel like I'm welcome. I don't feel like I have the same weight of opinion as somebody else does. So I'm going to sit this one out. I feel estranged. I can make it over here. So everything we're going to have to do, and this isn't just some old guy saying this, but it has to tie back to that. Or else we built some buildings, torn some old ones down. Well, guess what? These buildings will eventually get old too. And if we haven't done anything in that generation to better connect with one another, then this is a fool's gamble.
I want to put a bit in after the payment and everything gets laid out. I know we had a farmer's market downtown on Thursday, but maybe we could move the farmer's market
Fine with me.
to this side of town.
All you have to do, so that's not a city thing. No, I think it's a great idea. We talked about that a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But at the time, the site wasn't so clear.
Oh, yeah.
And all that stuff. But, ring up Mr. Duffy and say, how about at least once before this year is out, if we try to do it out there, let's see what works. Because we've done events like that. We did one in April last year, and then Joe Mitchell did one around the time of Juneteenth last year, remember?
Yes.
And at that point, it was still kind of rough and ready, but we made it work. A lot of tents, a lot of bouncy houses, a lot of great food, and unbelievable food, and so instead, or we could just make it a Saturday thing. I don't care.
Well, that would be my only, I agree, I'd love to have the farmer's market there. The other thing, I wish we could have it at a time when people aren't at work.
Well, we had it on a weekend.
No, yes, yeah, the
Like
Juneteenth
Saturday.
celebration, yes.
Or
Thank you, Bill.
some other, all right, Bill, or some other Saturday. And, it gets later a little bit. I don't want to have disregard for the Seventh-day Adventist. I went to Seventh-day Adventist school. And I think the Jewish people also celebrate the Sabbath. what I think is important is that it's sort of like when you have a class. You don't have it one time. If you have it one time and it doesn't work, you'll never know the feasibility of it.
Sure.
So you have it more than once. And it doesn't have to just be that event. Chicago shut down some streets. Chicago, you know, they have neighborhood festivals all the time. And they don't have neighborhood festivals because they think it's the best neighborhood in the world. They have neighborhood festivals because they're people who want to express their craft, their talent, their skills, and they have the space. So again, it becomes feasible in that regard. And it's a citywide event. You know, it's the Lincoln Art Festival, but everybody in the city is involved. So I think that there are an abundance of opportunities to generate community, to generate revenue. Well, we never seem to think about that because we focus on problems. And so I think that there are a lot of things that we can do to create community that without slamming some other folks.
Sure.
You got a build over there.
Well, I'm not just talking about over there.
No, I'm saying anywhere you got a build to get it going.
They're already neighborhoods.
It don't matter, no, I'm saying as far as the economy over there. And I'm saying over there, you got a build over there. There's nothing over there. Bring in some free stuff over there, giving them some free stuff, that's not really building a community. It's really kind of crippling it even more, it's giving away free stuff.
Well, I think two things. I think one, that's a perspective.
Yeah, it's
And I'll say that because we give students free stuff all the time. And granted, they're paying to come to school here, but students are part of that community because
get
they're
it.
so close. And so if we only think, and some of those people that live in that area are working.
I'm not saying they are, I'm just saying, I'm not down on anybody, I'm just saying you need to build a community, give them opportunity, put stuff there, just give them away free stuff. Like, that's not really saving them or fixing them.
When I say a festival, like a fair, do you know what that is?
Yeah, I know the festival is fair, I wasn't referring to that, I'm just saying what I said, I wasn't referring to your statement.
You think I'm suggesting that we give them?
No, I'm just talking to you, that's it. I'm not saying anything about something that you said. My response is nothing to something that you said, that's why.
Okay.
I was just saying they need to build it, I was just saying that to you.
Well, I think that it's going to, I don't think the city is going to agree to anything that's not sustainable, self-sustaining.
I mean, what's over there? A couple liquor stores and a couple convenience stores. There ain't no recreation over there. There ain't nothing for people to do. They built that park, there's more adults out there drinking over the gazebo and smoking weed than kids playing.
Okay.
It's sad they gotta build it up.
Well, and you know, I'll tell you this, I used to tell students when I came to NIU, when they would go, oh man, I just like the projects. I said, you know, Grand South is like the projects. Let me tell you the difference. If I drop a piece of paper 8 times in Grand South, they're gonna pick it up 9.
Right.
If I drop a piece of paper 8 times at the gazebo,
Right.
how many times gonna pick it up? Probably not 9.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, what I'm saying to you is that that's the problem is the maintenance. The problem is the sustainability.
Right.
So the problem is not just the folk that are dropping the paper,
Right.
but the problem is also the people who are supposed to maintain that property.
Right.
And so I think that becomes a mindset. And so I think when you change the mindset because you begin to do business differently, I think that creates a momentum of where we're going. And my understanding is that DeKalb wants to be, you know, proudly DeKalb, a kind of city where people would want to come and live, people would want to come and raise their children. But in order to do that, it takes all hands on deck.
Absolutely.
And so wherever we live, if we drop the paper 8 times, it needs to be picked up 9.
I love that. I love that.
But I'm not saying the citizens, that's not what I'm saying, I'm just saying as a whole, everything needs to be better as a whole, collective effort. That's what I'm saying, I'm not just saying like the people over there, I'm just saying in general.
Right.
Everybody got, the business owners, they let everybody sit outside and lower or smoke weed out front, it's on them too.
Yeah, but they need to sell fresh fruit as far as I'm concerned. They need to want to have,
But you know, they put the little quick marks and then they let everybody sit outside because you're gonna keep shop there. You say, I don't smoke weed, and you come in there and buy your snacks.
yeah.
Sure.
I passed those years of my life, I grew up in a world like that, so.
No, I get it, I'm just saying, that's like a lot of business owners over there, that's how they are, I understand the citizens.
Well, let me say this, then I'll go, because I know we need to go. I think that there are people buying sacks in a lot of different communities. And I think that there are people smoking sacks in a lot of different communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't see people hanging out in front of Jewel, I don't see people hanging out in front of Walmart, I don't see people hanging out in front of Hy-Vee. And I think the same people are doing the same behaviors. I don't think that people in this community have behaviors that other places don't
The
have.
same person go to jail, go right there.
Right, and the 7-Eleven.
But it's the owners of the business that were out there. I mean, if you own a business, you let people sit out front and smoke weed, drink. I know you wouldn't. That's what I'm saying, like, they allow that. It's not up there too, they just the citizens. I'm not blaming those people that, I grew up in the building.
Well, shall we adjourn?
Well, we talked about everything.
I don't think we have anything more.
Well, only, Joe, do you know if this is gonna be broader?
No,
But there's a way to say-
I apologize, my intention wasn't to curtail discussion or to not let people express themselves in any way. My feeling was that some people might have thought that no attempt has been made before, and we were starting from scratch, and I wanted to avoid it. That's my.
Oh, no, I didn't think.
No,
about
and
it.
what I wanted, and the reason I brought those in was to ask Bill, if you've got a blank playing field now, how is whatever going to come next, is whatever's going to come next year going to meet any of these needs that people have expressed? Are we looking for a health center? Are we looking, not we, I mean, me and you and somebody else, but I mean, is the
Yeah, the
city
community, yeah. the
looking
city.
for a walk-in health provider? Is the city looking for somebody that's going to provide fresh food? Is the city looking for these things? That's not just knock everything down and let's see what people do.
No, well, and you know, we've got some new community residents that have quite that are very generous in terms of what they're providing. I know one of the businesses provided a resource room for a community agency so that the young people could do computers. So I do think that there's some opportunities here now that weren't here then, and maybe we thought of them, but now that they're here, we can utilize them.
Absolutely.
So maybe there are people who benefit from being in this community in a variety of ways, who will contribute, and who can contribute financially.
Right.
And that's a not-for-profit situation, but it benefits the people in that community, so as they grow up, they will understand the importance of having access to things that they don't have now. So because I grow up at the end of where my parents' budget is, it doesn't mean that I can't experience some things beyond my parents' budget, because my parents live in this community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this community is able to give. So, you know, I've been hanging around with this for too long.
Yeah,
So,
I will entertain a motion.
so moved.
Thank you all.
And just take a quick vote. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you.